Welcome to the Riverside Project podcast. We are mobilizing Houston to empower families and transform generations. We hope these conversations will give you a greater understanding of the issues facing our community and inspire you to find your place along the river. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce to you a couple of friends who are from Promise Rose Residential Care Home. We have Donte Abram today. He's the program director of Promise Rose, and we have Nikia Johnson, who is the executive director. We're so glad that you're here with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah. Well, we want to start off just by finding out, what is Promise Rose Residential Care Home? Tell us a little bit about what you do and what your day-to-day looks like.
So Promise Rose, I always say what differentiates us from a group home, because people in the community, they're familiar with group home settings, but we offer so much more. So besides providing a loving and stable environment for the kiddos that we service, we also provide treatment services. And we do that in the forms of every child that we bring in and that we care for have one thing in common, and that's childhood trauma. So the kiddos that we care for, they had difficult backgrounds. They come from abuse, neglect, exploitation, you name it. So what differentiates us from a group home is that it's immediately when we get these kids, we provide them therapeutic services. They're provided a loving and nurturing environment by caring individuals, people who are in trauma-informed care. And that just begins the healing process. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what we do.
So it's essentially a kids in foster care, and they're in more of a group setting. When you say a group, how many generally do you have at one time in your home?
I would say our capacity is 16.
Okay.
We currently have 12 residents, and we pretty much function around that amount.
How do you care for that many people or that many kids with those types of backgrounds? Do you have other staff who help you, or are you just kind of the parents to that many kids? How do you make it work?
We do have 24-hour staff. We are there pretty much every day, I would say. At least one of us, Donte in particular, he's almost there Monday through Sunday. So we have a great team. We do have a lot of individuals that come out and lend support from different pastors, different church groups, mentors. We are now trying to get the families involved as well.
For the people listening who aren't as familiar with the foster care system, why do kids go into group homes? Why do they end up there? We know about foster care, right? We know that there are foster homes and things like that. But when we talk to a lot of people about group homes, they're kind of blown away by
Yes.
wait, what? There's actual, there's not kids that are in foster homes. Why are kids in that position?
Well, we specialize in providing therapeutic treatment. So what we try to explain to people, sometimes when these kids go through difficult childhoods and they have very traumatic experiences, they develop emotional disorders or emotional and intellectual kind of disorders. So they become a little more difficult. And I don't want to get too technical with how trauma affects the brain and things like that.
You can go there. I'm all about it. Go for it.
But so they can develop behaviors that are a little difficult to manage for parents, for foster parents even. So that's where we come in. We're trauma-informed, like I mentioned. They get a therapist immediately so we can address that trauma. We collaborate with the therapist, and we develop an individual plan for each kid so that they can learn, first and foremost, about how to overcome, building resilience, learning to live with things like ADHD, mood dysregulation disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. These are things that, first and foremost, we have to educate the child on. But a lot of times we have to educate those parents, too, because they need help.
Yeah.
It's a lot to care for those kids who's been through that. So that's where we come in. So we really just provide, we like to call it now, we're moving towards residential intervention, where we can help those parents. We'll bring the kiddo in, we'll assist them, we'll develop a plan and figure out what they need to support them. And then that way we can transition them back home, hopefully, with the parents involved and teach them how to lend that support and give them the same support that we can give them.
You mentioned trauma-informed care, and I mean, we'd be remiss if we don't kind of talk about all of that, because
Yeah.
I think it is so, so very important. And
Right.
you guys know that. You've attended a lot of trainings, and you've done a lot of that type of work to understand how trauma does affect the brain. We know from a lot of neuroscience research, even 20 years ago, it was really believed that these kids just were brain damaged, and that they could not heal. So I'm so grateful to be living in the day and age that we're living in, which
Nice.
is a time where we have the science and the research to back up that these kids can heal, but they need really stable relationships and healthy people around them in order to do that. And so I love what you guys do, because you're giving them the treatment, but they're getting relationships with people who love them and care for them. Why is it so important that it's trauma informed? What's the difference there on like regular treatment versus trauma informed treatment?
And it's a lot like what you just alluded to, the history there, where people didn't understand. A lot of people still don't understand, and that's why it's such a pressing need to be informed about trauma and what happened, but also what can happen. So by constantly training and being involved with educating ourselves about trauma and what we can do, what it does to the brain, we're essentially we're learning how to help these kids, and we're erasing the stigma, like you said earlier, that these kids are damaged kids, or that's a bad kid and they can't be helped. So we're kind of erasing those stigmas, and that's why we're pushing it. Trauma informed care is really important, not just for us professionally, but we're trying to educate the community as well.
Yep.
Because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, absolutely. In one of a training that we went through in the past, one of the things that we learned was it's not so much when we're looking at these kids that have experienced these really hard things. What we often want to do as a community, or even sometimes people who are caring for them, myself included, parenting kids that come from hard places, the question is sometimes, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? Because some of the behaviors are like, where did that even come from? There's like a trigger, and then they're all over the place. And so often it's kind of like, what's wrong with you? And being able to change that language to, where did this come from? What happened to you? How can I come alongside you in that healing process to help you through it? That's it's a totally different mindset with them, and the kids respond differently, right? When someone says, what's wrong with you? Versus, hey, what happened? How can we walk together hand in hand so that you don't have to go through this alone? So I love that that's a big part of what you guys do. What are the challenges that you face? What are the things that you go through, that the kids go through on a regular basis, that are just the things that kind of either repetitively come up, or the biggest challenges just that you face in your day-to-day work?
I would say for that one, of course, is the kiddos that don't really have a strong support system and not knowing where do I go from here. So like Donte said, we do a lot of treatment there. So a lot of them are working extra hard to find a loving home. And at the end, we're like, okay, you have completed our program. I mean, you're so successful now. Let's find a home for you. And not everyone have a home to go to.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most challenging for me at this point, where, just at our facility alone, we have a lot of kiddos that, we're seeking homes for now.
Right.
So what we find ourselves doing now is going out our way to locate homes, because not everyone does have a family. And I think that's the most challenging thing now, is to see a kiddo and have to look them in their eye and say, okay, you've made so much success. Now, where do you go? So a lot of times I'm looking at Donte like, okay, do we need to open our home now? And
Take
it's
'em all
sad
in.
because, that is kind of what we're facing now. There's not many foster homes.
And I would just say, in addition to what Nikia said, it's also the right kind of homes.
Yeah.
I mentioned, when we mentioned the trauma, sometimes they have to learn to live with bipolar.
Yes.
And they need caregivers who can adjust and can support those needs. So I think that's where the efforts are trying to kind of go and focus on creating homes that are ready for them. Because even like Nikia said, another problem is when a child completes a program, they work really hard. They come up with, okay, how to manage this behavior in a more productive way. A lot of times they'll go home or back to a foster home, but that parent isn't really equipped to support them. And then we see that child back in foster care again, and they're back in the system. So that's something that we're working hard on too. We're trying to work with
Yes.
everybody we can. Of course, we've sat on panels with you about building capacity, getting out in the community, educating others about trauma-informed care and giving them the support they need as well. So that's kind of where we're focused right now. That's what the
Yeah,
direction
permanency.
is.
Yes.
Yeah, permanency. We want to focus on, okay, let's build the right environment,
Right.
to help
Yes.
those parents.
Like a lot of times, the diagnosis will never go away. They're not going to change. So it's who's willing to step up and learn how
Right.
to work with them.
And sometimes it's just like for a family who's wanting to foster, right? Before they get a child or a child even is introduced to them, they see a case file, they see a paper that
Yeah.
says things like bipolar or says things about where they were before they even came to you,
Right.
which was lots of behaviors. They're getting treatment, they're getting healing, they're coming through your program, but it's all still there in the file. That file, it follows them. It's really hard to look at a file without the kid in front of them and without spending any
Yes.
time with the child and knowing the ways that they've healed. They only see the bad things, and then your
course.
mind just kind of goes to all, what does bipolar mean? Well, what is that
Yes.
going to mean when, down the road? Am I equipped to heal or to help them heal from this? Am I equipped to be a parent? I'd love to hear a little bit about what are some creative ways maybe that people could step in, even maybe if they're not going to foster, but how could they be maybe a permanent place or a place of safety for a kid who might be already in their life somewhere?
We're getting out into the community. We've had several churches who've been kind, and they're partnering with us. And it's like you said, sometimes it takes building those organic relationships. You don't have to read a bunch of papers, just come out and have fun, enjoy being around these kiddos. And that's somehow these relationships are built. And then you get a family who's asking Nikia, hey, what's his name? What's his situation? I'd really like to get to know him more. Can I come and spend some time with him and things like that?
Yeah.
Other things that we're doing is we're starting to educate families. We're inviting them to come in and events. Some of our families, they do live a little bit further away, so we're asking how can we provide transportation for you to come and be a part
Yeah.
of this child's life a little more often, and providing them with resources. Because we don't want them to feel like it's a separation. We want
Yeah.
we want to include them and even let them drive.
Yeah.
Tell us what works for you, so that we can not only help the child, but we can help you as well.
And that's got to mean a whole lot for a child to see you going the
Yeah.
extra mile to make sure that they have relationships with their family members, right? Even if they live in Dallas or even if they live
Yeah.
an hour away, that can be such a huge barrier. But yet those stable relationships are what those
course.
kids need
Yes.
to heal. So seeing you go that extra mile, I'm sure that goes even further with their healing because they know that you're for them and you're for their family. So that's just a beautiful part of it. One of the things that we've talked about recently has been, these kids are in the community. They're in schools. They have teachers. They have coaches. We talk about the river. We talk about how there's midstream where foster care is. There's upstream and all the reasons why kids enter foster care. And then there's downstream and all the things that happen when kids don't exit foster care with loving, stable adults. And kind of all along the river are opportunities for the community to step in and the community to find a place. And so often in the past, it's been foster a child. And yes, you've already mentioned, we need people to foster children. We need people to take them in. But that's also a very daunting thing. And it's not the
Yes, of
only
course.
way to intervene. And so we always talk about the fact that we're really just asking people to use whatever gift they have, whatever resource or talent they have. For some, that might be as a school teacher who may have one of your kids in their classroom or a kid who's in a different type of residential treatment center. What would you say to them in terms of how they could engage with the kids in your home or with you as an organization?
We have a lot of kiddos who've been in foster care for a number of years. And it's sad, really, when you look on their call list and you say, you like to make a call, who would you like to call? And there's nobody there. They've had so many interactions with teachers and coaches and people throughout their lives over the course of their lives, but no lasting relationships. So to touch on that, even if somebody just wanted to get on a kid's call list, somebody to call, as simple as that, they may think that they can't do much, but if you can answer the phone and talk for 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes that means the world to a kid.
Yeah.
Let alone just, coming up, and kids smile so much when somebody comes and say, I'm here to see you, and I brought you some McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like what you said, Amber. Yeah, sometimes people feel like, oh, what can I do? I can't do, sometimes
Yeah.
every hero doesn't wear a cape. Like, believe it or not, like you can literally walk in and talk to a kid for 10 minutes and ask them how they're doing. Sometimes that just lights up their day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's always something everybody can do. I don't care how small, it really matters.
And I like even with the sports, a lot of our kiddos don't get to play sports, so that is something we're pushing now. And we have right now 2 that's running track and field, and they're doing great. And the coaches have started reaching out, and they're wanting to
That's
know, what
amazing.
exactly are you guys doing up there? Do you have any more kiddos that, we can come see, pick up? Can they at least come to the track meets? So that there is helping us as well. So even
That's so
making
cool.
those kids feel a part, because a lot of times they kind of shy away from events, or they feel like, hey, I may be moved and I may not be able to participate. So different little sport leagues reaching out. I think we had one time come out, maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and they just did drills with them and did like a small meet at the end of the summer. So there's a lot of things that can be done.
Yeah, it's just showing up, right?
Just showing up.
It's
Yeah.
just
That's
show
all it
up. How
takes.
can you show up for a kid?
Yeah.
Yes.
In a big way or a small way? You mentioned just showing up. That's all we're
Yes.
asking people to do, is to show up and just know that there are kids, older kids, teenagers who are in our community who aren't in foster homes, that don't have kind of the pretty picture video that we see sometimes of the foster family success story. They 100% are a success story. It just doesn't look like the picture. So one of the last questions I want to ask you is, why do you do it? Parenting one kid from a hard place
Yes.
takes so much. To be able to step in day after day for a dozen kids, looking them in the eye and saying, I see you, and you are showing up for them every day. Why do you keep doing it?
I mean, it just means the world to me. It's my passion. It's my purpose. And that's the biggest thing, Everybody's searching for purpose. So when I found a purpose, it makes me feel complete. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I love to see the progress. And we always kind of speak on one kiddo that we have now. And when we first got this kiddo, I mean, he didn't talk, he couldn't read. A lot of times he'll kind of walk around like a dinosaur or an animal.
How old is he?
He's 11 now.
Okay.
So
So
to
maybe
see him
developmentally
grow, yes,
seeing him at the beginning,
but now
much
he's
younger.
reading.
Yeah.
He's talking, he's communicating. So that keeps me going, to know that, hey, we're doing something right.
Yeah.
So we show up every day to make sure we have a success story for the next kiddo there. And, we had this caseworker come, and she's like, hey, I don't think he's ready. And I'm like, well, he can stay here because this is home for him. So
Yeah.
being there for them, letting them know that this is home. We are your family. You do have someone, and we'll show up every day, regardless of what you go through. We're going to wipe your tears. We're going to give you hugs. Whatever you need us to be at that moment, that's what we'll be. And that's what I think keep us going, keep our staff going. And we're going to continue to do it because we love the success stories from them.
Yeah. That's amazing. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How can people in the community support you if they wanted to contact you, if they wanted to, we mentioned things like showing up, but practically, we mentioned mentoring. There's several organizations across the city of Houston who have mentor training programs, and they have structure around mentoring. Anything else that practically that people, if someone's listening and said, I want to get involved with what you do or support you in some way, how can they get in touch with you, and what could that look like?
Not just us, but any organizations like us. There's many. There's girls, there's boys. It's a diverse group of foster kids that need assistance and need help. And it's like you said, whatever gifts you guys have, like, they're welcome. Bring it to the table. Everybody does something different. There's nothing too small. There's nothing too large. Mentoring, volunteering. If you have programs that exist already and you'd like to introduce them to our kids, we're more than willing to join and participate. So it's just so many ways. Even get educated. We talked a lot about trauma-informed care. There's TBRI. There's a lot that you can learn if you want to learn more. Dive in, learn more, because that'll just help us. That'll increase the community's awareness of how to help these kiddos. Because, like you said, you may encounter them in your classrooms, in your churches, wherever in the community. So if you're informed and you're aware, then that just helps us. That helps the kids.
Yes.
That's great. You guys are heroes. I know you mentioned before, heroes don't always wear capes. You guys are heroes. We consider you as heroes. I've seen you in your work. I've seen you in the community. And I can attest to the fact that you guys love these kids and sacrifice for them every day. And so I can't speak for them, but from where I sit, thank you so much. And we want to support you any way that we can. So thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
And thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
To those listening, we hope these conversations have inspired you to find your place along the river. And we welcome you to join us in bringing hope and renewal to the city of Houston. If you'd like more information on how to get involved, please visit riversideproject.org and submit a contact form. We'll see you next time.